So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. Yuki back here, BSN Network. This is BSN Network podcast here today. It is Wednesday, September 8th. Hopefully everybody's having a day so far and a good rest of their day. Yes, their day. It is, in fact, Wednesday, September 8th here today, coming off of another night in baseball last night and another tough New York Yankees loss as the New York Yankees fall again to the Toronto Blue Jays by a score of 5-1. And, just another one of these tough losses. Just not generating, enough good at-bats. Or I should take that back. I just not generating enough runs, not hitting enough with runners in scoring position. And it's just one of these things where it's just like, the frustration continues to build as a fan. We continue to slide here. We're on a little bit of a skid. And we just got to find a way to bounce back because right now, the New York Yankees are not playing anywhere near to what they looked in that 13-game win streak. And, of course, that's obvious, but we're not showing any signs of it. And, you could at least, maybe take some positives from even a negative loss and say, oh, well, at least he did this and did this and this. Yankees have scored one run yesterday. They scored 0 the day before. That just can't happen. You're not going to be able to win baseball games not scoring runs. You're not going to be able to win baseball games only scoring a run or two a game. Even 2 runs, that's not that much. That means you're asking your pitcher plus your bullpen to hold them down to at least 1 run. So, Yankees got to find a way to generate more runs. As I mentioned yesterday, I thought at first it really wasn't so much the offense because the pitching not let up 8 runs that day, but the offense was struggling as well. It's accumulation of everything. And, the pitching has been doing the job. The pitching allowed 5 runs yesterday, but, let's be honest here. Scoring 1 run's not going to get the job done. So, definitely frustrated. Yankees just are not, hitting when there's runners on. We're not getting that situational hits. And I talked about it when we were, in that Orioles series, or the 13-game stretch, rather. And I said, this team looks completely different from when runners were scoring position, scoring with runners in scoring position. We look like a team that, when runners were on, it was just unbelievable. When runners were on, it was starting to become a guaranteed that we would score runs. And, now it's looking like the old New York Yankees, where we have a lot of just, it's not that we're putting together bad at-bats, it's just a lot of just, you get a single and then there's no other, there's nothing else. And the Yankees did not have an extra base hit today, or yesterday rather, or a walk. And we haven't had that since 1962. We haven't had it in 2 straight games. So we're hitting singles, which is fine. We're just not getting those runners home. So tough loss for the Yankees. Got to find a way to snap out of it. I'm not trying to back up the Yankees here at all, so don't take my words and twist them. But the Yankees yesterday had more hits than the Toronto Blue Jays. So we are hitting the ball. We're just not doing it in certain situations. People aren't going to look at that. The Yankees got hits yesterday. We got 8 hits yesterday. That's not that bad. The Blue Jays got 7, and the Blue Jays won the game. You want to know why the Blue Jays won the game? Because they got more situational hits, and when runners were on, they got the hits. When the Yankees got hits, it was no runners on, and when they had runners on, they weren't getting the hits. So Yankees are getting runners on. They're getting on base. They're just not doing anything with those runners, not doing anything when there's first and second, 1 out, or runner on first, no outs, or you get the leadoff man on, or first and third, 2 outs, instead of just maybe hitting a little blooper, first and third, 1 out, you ground into a double play. That's what's happening with the New York Yankees. So, Yankees, tough loss. Got to find a way to bounce back. It really is. It is what it is. Got to find a way to bounce back. All right, so let's get to the Mets. Also won yesterday as well, or they won yesterday, not also, but they won 9-4. It was a close game there for a little bit. It was 4-4, then 5-4, but the Mets were able to carry on and get the win. So the Mets, go from blowing it against the Nationals on Monday to getting a win yesterday. So the Mets continue this odd, kind of stretch here where they get, a couple wins in a row, then they start to lose again. And yesterday they got the win. Monday they blew it. Yesterday they get the win. We'll see if that's a start of a streak or anything for the New York Mets, because I'll tell you what, these are big games for the Mets. Even though it's against the Marlins and it's in Miami and it's, in the Dome, and it's just the energy isn't there. These are big games for the Mets because the Mets after this, they got a rough schedule. And I understand they're facing a slumping Yankees team, but the Mets aren't much better either. And then you got the Brewers, and then you have the teams like the Cardinals and the Brewers and teams like that, and it doesn't get any easier for the Mets. So these are actually big games for the Mets to win, to try to gain as much ground as they can before they get into that rough stretch to end the year, which starts with the Yankees, then gets to the Cardinals, then gets to the Brewers. And I know the Yankees are struggling, but the Mets aren't much better than the Yankees. So they're not better. I don't think the Mets are any better than the Yankees. As a matter of fact, you look at the numbers, they aren't. The Yankees are a better team than the Mets. There's no doubt about that. But, we'll see what the Yankees do. So, like I said, Yankees got to find ways to get hits or runners in scoring position. Everyone's saying, oh, we're not hitting. That's not really that true. We had 8 hits yesterday. We had more hits than the Blue Jays. But you want to know why the Blue Jays won? Because they got more situational hits. When runners were on, they got the hits. It's simple as that. It's not rocket science, people. This isn't a mathematical equation that we have to solve. It's simple. Hit with runners in scoring position, and you win games. Now, hitting with runners on is not easy. Hitting a baseball isn't easy. But trying to figure out what's wrong with the Yankees, that's what's wrong. It's not that we're not hitting because we got 8 hits yesterday. So I just want to make that clear. But we got to find a way to win. I mean, you can't keep slumping. And, the Rays keep bailing us out. Yankees are still in a wild card right now. But if we continue to lose and the Red Sox catch fire, that could change very quickly. And we're getting lucky because the Rays are beating the Red Sox and we're still holding that lead. But, this is an opportunity to gain ground on the Red Sox and we're not doing it. So, frustration, but got to find a way to bounce back today. But Yankees and Mets both today. Third game of the 4-game set today for the Yankees, and the Mets continue their series against the Marlins. All right, so let's get to the topics for today's podcast. Tomorrow we have football. By the way, today is Derek Jeter, his big day. Will be inducted into the MLB, will be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Super, super excited to watch that. That's 1:30 Eastern on MLB Network, so definitely watch that. Check that out. Yankee fan or not a Yankee fan, baseball fan or not a baseball fan. It's always fun to watch the Hall of Fame inductions, see all the speeches, see, what all they're like, and just the venue as a whole. Cooperstown, a great area with the Baseball Hall of Fame and all that great stuff. So that's on today. And then baseball's on tomorrow, or football, baseball along with football, but football starts tomorrow. Thursday night football tomorrow, Bucks, Cowboys, and then Sunday's the big start to the season as the Jets, Panthers will start off, Giants will be home against the Broncos, and the rest of the NFL will also get going on Sunday, and then the Ravens, Raiders will wrap up week 1 on Monday. So a lot of sports ahead of us, but let's get to the topic for today's podcast. Ravens, I talked about yesterday, extending Mark Andrews. Well, today they have signed Le'Veon Bell, or yesterday rather, they signed Le'Veon Bell. Obviously, we all know a lot of injuries with the Ravens running back. J.K. Dobbins, torn ACL. Justice Hill now down as well. The Ravens need running back depth, and they were going to go with Gus Edwards and, Justice Hill probably behind him, but now they're in a big issue because they really don't have running backs. They're J.K. Dobbins is down. Hill's now down. Now you're really left with not Justice Hill. Now you're left with J.K. Dobbins. They need running backs. So the Ravens go out and sign Le'Veon Bell. Us Jet fans, us NFL fans are all too familiar with him. Was you could say the best running back in the NFL when he was with the Steelers. Went to the Jets, was not good. Went to the Chiefs, was not good. Now he's with the Ravens. Can they revamp him? We'll see what they do. I'll get to this move, talk about it. It's a depth addition. He's not going to start, but I'll get to it, talk about it, what it means for the Ravens. I also want to get to the Jets cornerback situation today. The Jets, all the NFL teams yesterday pretty much released their unofficial depth chart. So pretty much the unofficial depth chart is, your unofficial, roster of guys, who's starting, who's backing up, third strings, fourth strings, who's going to do all that stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see when teams release its unofficial depth charts because you get kind of an idea of what it's going to look like, but it's not completely official. So the Jets released theirs yesterday, and there's still a question at right tackle. Is it going to be Font or Moses? We knew that was going to be, I think we all kind of knew that was going to be competition. I thought at first it was going to be Moses that was get the job, but then throughout training camp, it kind of became a competition, so we'll see who starts there. But either way, you have that. But the cornerback yesterday, there's still a question mark of who's going to be the number 2 cornerback for the New York Jets. We know it's going to be Bryce Hall, and the nickel's going to be Javon Guidry. But is it going to be now Brandon Echols, Isaiah Dunn, or Jason Pinnock? Who's it going to be at that number 2 cornerback position? I'll give you my thoughts, who I think, who I want, and we'll get to that. And then we'll finish off the podcast with the New York sports update. Yankees and Mets both on today. You got the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Just a ton of sports. Baseball, Hall of Fame, induction ceremony. That in itself, even if you just had the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, that in itself is awesome. Can't wait to watch that. So you got that, and then you got NFL football tomorrow, which I'm going to keep saying because we start the NFL season tomorrow. Just super excited for that. And then you got, you have that, and then Friday, baseball. Saturday, you got a lot of college football on. And then Sunday is the start of the season. It feels like Sunday can't come soon enough. It's like it's Wednesday right now. It's just like each day it's getting closer and closer, but it just feels like it's just taking forever. Like I just want to get to the NFL season already. But yeah, a lot to get to today on the podcast as always. And with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. So Le'Veon Bell, Ravens reportedly agreed to contract after Dobbins-Hill injuries. And yes, you have heard that right. The Baltimore Ravens have went out and signed Le'Veon Bell, running back kind of from the chance it was with the Jets last season, then traded him mid-year to the Chiefs. Now he's on the Ravens. So Bell went from being on the Steelers to going for the Steelers his whole career. Looked like he was going to stay there. Arguably the best running back in the league. Was putting up numbers that were just out of this world crazy. The Jets got him in free agency of the 2019. Yeah, right, because it wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was 2019, and until he played 2020 as well. So we got him that free agency. It was the big prize of free agency. Like, Le'Veon Bell was the biggest free agent out there. We got him. He was the big prize. He stunk with us. Played his first season with us. Was not good. Second season was not good. And then we traded him to the Chiefs. You know his role there. It wasn't a big role. Kind of more of a backup role. Didn't get much opportunity. Ended up leaving the Chiefs, finished out his contract there, whatever. They got rid of him, and now he's on the Baltimore Ravens. So Bell went from being on the Steelers, looking like he was going to be there, to bouncing around to 3 teams in a matter of 2 seasons. It's been pretty crazy for him, but the Ravens find some much-needed running back depth. And we all, going into the year, as I mentioned yesterday with the Baltimore Ravens, I feel like this is turning into a Baltimore Ravens podcast, with yesterday talking about Mark Andrews, today talking about Le'Veon Bell. I bet you, maybe tomorrow we'll get another story about the Ravens, but a lot of Ravens stuff to get to. And then you got the game picks on Friday, which we'll talk about the Ravens because they're in the NFL, and I'm going to give you my game picks. So a lot of Ravens stuff. But the Ravens going into the season, as I mentioned yesterday, they're a very run-heavy football team. And I talked about that yesterday, that we are a very run-heavy football team. We run the ball a ton. That's how the Ravens run their offense. It's an old school type offense. It's an offense that requires running. Your quarterback's a running quarterback. You have good running backs. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. Now you had Le'Veon Bell. Well, Dobbins is down. Hill is now down. You have Gus Edwards, and now you had Le'Veon Bell. So they're a very run-heavy offense. They don't pass the ball much. When they do, it's a lot of short stuff. I mentioned this yesterday. I talked about this yesterday with Mark Andrews when I was talking about their offense and signing Mark Andrews and what it means and what do I think about it. I said yesterday, a lot of run, and when they pass it, it's a lot of short passes, and they rely on their receivers to pick up those gains. For example, it's like like I said yesterday, 6-7 yard pass, you're hoping that your receivers turn that 6-yard pass into a 13-yard gain. And when you run, it's a lot of runs. It's a lot of just, snap. It's a lot of, kind of pistol formations where you got, Jackson and you got a running back to his left or a running back to his right, maybe a guy behind him. It's a very interesting style offense. It's a run-heavy offense. And we've always talked about it. And a lot of people make fun of the Ravens, the way they run their offense, because in a league now where we all love to see these guys air the ball out 60 yards downfield and make these big touchdowns like Mahomes. That's why Mahomes is so good, because he airs the ball out 300 yards. He seems like he could throw the ball 300 yards and it just keeps going. And he gets Tyreek Hill for a 60-yard connection and everyone explodes about it. So the Ravens offense does get kind of made fun of. But it's a huge loss. Like, I don't think people realize how big of a loss it was when they lost J.K. Dobbins. I don't think people realize. Because J.K. Dobbins, who had a rookie year last year, was really solid, was especially good towards the end of the season. You look at his final 5 weeks of the season, 5 to 6 weeks of the season, he had a really good week, a really good couple weeks there. I think for the final 5 weeks of the season, I think he scored like 5 touchdowns in those final 5 weeks. He scored a touchdown each of those weeks. Not that means everything, but he was getting in the end zone, his confidence was up, and boom, he tears ACL. I don't think people realize, and personally me at first too, I don't think I completely realized how big of a loss that was for the Ravens because of how run heavy they are on their offense and because of how much they rely on not just Lamar Jackson to use his legs, but their running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. And now Dobbins goes down, so it's Gus Edwards the next man up, and then Justice Hill goes down. And as much as people might want to criticize this move and say, oh, well, Bell's not good anymore, he's washed, he's not good. Well, I want to tell you this first. Le'Veon Bell is not going there to be the starting running back. As a matter of fact, they signed him to the practice squad. And when he's ready, they'll activate him to the active roster. So Le'Veon Bell is not going to the Ravens to be the starting running back. He's not going to the Ravens this year to rush for 1,000 yards and win MVP. That's not what the Ravens are looking out of him, or wanting to get out of him, and I don't think that's what many people should expect. What you should expect out of Le'Veon Bell as a Baltimore Ravens fan is a veteran. You're adding a veteran. I've always said this, never bad when you add a veteran. A relatively actually younger locker room. I mean, Gus Edwards is young, Dobbins was young. There's actually a lot of young guys. Jackson still, even though he's been in the league now for, a couple seasons, he's still relatively young. He was from the draft class with Josh Allen and all them. So he's still relatively young. This is his, 4th season in the league. So he's still young. So you had a veteran. And you had a guy that's had experience, especially in the division. He played with Pittsburgh. Now he's with Baltimore, the rivals. He's in the division. He knows the division a lot. He's very familiar with it. He knows what it is. He kind of knows a lot about the Steelers, can maybe give them some insight. And it's a depth addition. It's a guy that's going to give you some depth because the Ravens need depth badly. And, are you going to be, as a Raven fan, Ravens fans aren't, I don't think, waking up today saying, oh, we should have got Devonta Freeman or, oh, we should have took this guy. It's a depth addition. Okay, you could still make the argument that Bell will probably be the 3rd running back on the roster behind Gus Edwards and the other guy that I forget his name. Got to come better prepared, I guess, but I forget his name, and it's probably Bell. And maybe Bell does slip into the second role, but, I kind of see this as, and this will be mentioned in the article, which is where I kind of got this from, so credit to the article here. I kind of see this move as like a change of pace. He's going to be kind of a change of pace type back. Because Gus Edwards, he's an undrafted rookie, or I believe he was undrafted out of Rutgers. Kind of a guy that no one really knew coming out of college. I never really even heard of him. Kind of a guy that, was just, kind of placed on the roster. And the Ravens have actually turned him into a pretty explosive back. Is he Todd Gurley in his prime? No. Is he Le'Veon Bell in his prime? No. But is he Alvin Kamara? Is he Derrick Henry? Is he Christian McCaffrey? No, but he's actually a pretty explosive runner. When you actually watch him play, when he gets his opportunities, and we'll see what he's like in a bigger role once teams start to pick up, his production might drop a little bit, but I actually think this is good for Gus Edwards because he gets an opportunity to really get a full chance and not just maybe show what the Ravens what he's capable of, because he's shown them already in his short couple times that he gets in there because he's been the backup. Not only show what the Ravens what he's capable of, but also show, keep forgetting to put on this light here, but also show the NFL what he's capable of. And he's a pretty explosive back. So we talk about downhill, like in the NFL, you have different types of tight ends, receivers, quarterbacks. There's quarterbacks like Mahomes that love to air the ball out. And a perfect example here, we're talking about the Ravens, a quarterback like Jackson that likes to run the ball and doesn't throw the ball deep as much. There's quarterbacks that throw the ball a ton and they don't run. There's quarterbacks that run a ton, don't throw as much. There's running backs that are downhill runners, and there's running backs that are short game runners, and there's also running backs that will give you big time yards, but might not be great in third down situations when it requires breaking tackles. So Gus Edwards is a downhill runner, and what they call that is, or an uphill runner, a downhill runner, whatever you want to call it. He's actually pretty electric and like I said, explosive when he has the ball. Like, there's a difference here. Gus Edwards, when he gets the ball, when he gets the ball, like, he runs straight at the line. Like, he's not slowing down, lowering his shoulder, breaking tackles, picking up big yards. Le'Veon Bell, which was the issue with the New York Jets, he did not fit the scheme at all. He's a guy he's a patient type runner. He's a guy that's going to be patient. He's a guy that's going to wait for the play to, he's going to wait for the offensive line to make their move, and then he's going to go. And that's what we saw why he struggled so much on the Jets. Because when he was with Pittsburgh, they had a great offensive line. And the offensive line was able to create space for him. And when he was with the Jets, they didn't do that. The offensive line wasn't able to create space. So Bell would wait, and then all the guys would just swarm around him, and boom, it's a 2-yard gain instead of 15. Gus Edwards, on the other hand, is more of a downhill runner, a guy that once he gets the ball, if he's supposed to run right or left, he goes with that, and boom, he lowers his shoulder and will just, move that pile. That's what Gus Edwards is like. So it's a change of pace back. When defenses might prepare for Gus Edwards, and you throw Bell on there maybe in a 2nd down and 5 situation, and now the defense has got to, maybe adjust a little bit and maybe swarm a little bit more, kind of stay hesitant to see where Bell goes. Because Bell is a guy that, when I watched him with the Jets, we saw him with the Steelers, and in a short time with Kansas City, he's been the same runner he's always been his entire career. Just how he is. When you watch him, you set up a run play. Let's say it's a run to the left. Bell goes wherever the offensive line goes. So if the offensive line creates a lane on the left side and the run's supposed to go to the right, Bell takes that left. If the offensive line creates a hole in the right, but the run's supposed to go up the middle, he'll go to the right. That's the type of runner Bell is. He waits to see what options are open and waits to see the offensive line really get open. And Gus Edwards, like I said, on the other hand, more of a downhill runner, a guy that when he gets the ball, he's just going to run. He's just going to run. And that's okay because it works. He's just going to run. And most of the running backs are like that. Most of the running backs nowadays are more, they get the ball and they just run. You don't see a running back, besides Le'Veon Bell, but we all know he's kind of a little past his prime. He gets the ball, he kind of waits. You see a lot more running backs nowadays, they just run. And they get it, they run, they find a hole, they take it, and they try to get as many yards as they can. So Le'Veon Bell is a change of pace back. And most of all, it's depth. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and say I love the move. I'm not going to sit here and say I hate the move. It's a depth move. Is he going to get 20 carries a game? No. Is he going to probably rush for 1,000 yards this season? No. I mean, I guess the way the Ravens running backs injuries are going, not that I'm saying there's going to be another injury, but I wouldn't be surprised now that you have 2 big running back injuries. If there is another injury, maybe he does get an increased role. But as of right now, Bell is probably either he's not going to start. Gus Edwards is going to start, and he deserves the opportunity to start. So Gus Edwards is going to start. It's whatever happens behind Gus Edwards is the question. I mean, if Bell is playing pretty well and he's taking advantage of his opportunities, Bell might be the number 2. Right now, Bell is probably the number 3. I mean, he's on the practice squad technically right now, and we'll see, wherever he goes there. But, I mean, and I've always said this about players. If you can get Le'Veon Bell to do anything close to what he did with the Steelers, whether that's, even if it's just having flashes of doing what he did, even if it's when he ever gets his opportunity, just making that really good run. Because the Ravens are in a division with a lot of good defenses. The Steelers, we all know, very good defense. Although they could be taking a hit with TJ Watt and his contract issues. I was going to talk about that today, but I might get to that. When I talk about the Ravens and maybe my game pick for the Monday night game, I might get into, not Ravens, the Steelers game. I might get into that because TJ Watt could be out week 1. And he could be out until he gets a new contract. He wants to be the highest paid defensive player in the league. He wants to, it's how the NFL is now. It's how sports are. Every guy wants to get paid. But back to my point with the with Le'Veon Bell here, you're in a division with a lot of good defenses. That AFC North is very good. You got the Ravens, a very good defense. Bell obviously doesn't have to go up against the Ravens other than in practice, but Ravens very good. Ravens have a very underrated defense. You have the Browns, a very good defense. Their secondary, if Denzel Ward can stay healthy, is really good. I think their secondary gets overshadowed a little bit with their linebackers and Myles Garrett being on the edge. But their secondary is sneaky good, especially if Denzel Ward can stay healthy. And you have the Steelers. And I think they have a top 5 defense in the league. We all know TJ Watt. I mean, if he's not there, That's a big issue, but Minkah Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, all those guys in that defense, very good defense. And their pass rush is, you could say, the best we've seen in a long time. So, one of the best we've seen. So you have that. Bengals, they're in a rebuild. But let's be honest here. Out of the 3 teams competing for the division, Bengals probably aren't going to be one of them. It's probably going to be the Ravens and the Browns, and the Steelers are going to be outside looking in. They'll be competitive, but they're not going to be up there with the Ravens and the Browns. So they're going to get some good defenses. So a change of pace back probably is good, but if they can show any flashes of what Bell looked like when he was with the Steelers, that's all you really need. Because let's be honest here. He's not going to get 20 carries a game. He might get 3-4 a game, and boom, call it a day. So, we'll see. But, I mean, he's not the same running back he once was. And I don't know. I think I still sit here and say I believe that he could be. I just think you got to put him in the right situation. But, I mean, the Chiefs, they have a good offense line. They have a good offense, and he didn't do well there. I think if Bell really wants to show if he's still capable, he's got to be a starter. Because that's just how he is. He can't go, he can't get 10 carries every week and stay warm. I mean, that's what happened with the Jets. He was getting 20, 25 carries with the Steelers. He went to the Jets, he was getting about 13 carries. That's like 9, 10 less carries than what he was getting there, and it just wasn't working. I mean, it is what it is. And then with the Chiefs, he wasn't getting many opportunities. And then you go to the Ravens now, and that might, it's just not the same runner he once was, but it's a depth move. It's a move that the Ravens needed to make. I said a couple days ago when I was talking about Dobbins, I said they didn't need to, but that was at the time where Justice Hill didn't go down. Once Hill went down, you needed another running back, and they go out and get him in Le'Veon Bell. All right, so Le'Veon Bell, Ravens reportedly agreed a contract after Dobbins Hill injuries. Le'Veon Bell's prime may be in the rearview mirror, but he reached his first Super Bowl during the 2020 campaign and has now reportedly earned a new contract. The Baltimore Ravens signed the 29-year-old to their practice squad Tuesday and will likely add him to the active roster when he is ready. Like I said, I mean, he's still got to learn the playbook. It's a ramp-up period. Signing a guy on a Tuesday when you have a game on a Monday, it's, for him to learn the playbook and all that stuff, it's going to take some time. He might be out there week 1. He might not play much, but they're going to probably ease him into things. They're not just going to throw him into the fire. I mean, he has been in the league now for a little bit. It's crazy that he's only 29. It really is. It feels like he should be in his 30s. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't mean that he plays like he... I mean, he struggled recently, but... for a guy that played all those years with Pittsburgh, I mean, he came into the league, I guess, young. Because he's been in the league for... Is this his, 7th, 8th year now, right, I think? I guess it's not crazy that he's 29. But either way, per ESPN's Adam Schefter, that's what reported... likely to add him to the active roster. Schefter noted the season-ending injuries to J.K. Dobbins and Justice Hill played a role in the decision. That's not a shocker. I think we all know. I think if Dobbins was the only injury, I don't think they would have went out and signed a guy. But then with Hill going down, he's a depth guy. He's not going to start, but he was a depth guy. Now it's like you need to sign a running back because that's 2 losses. You kind of have 4 backs. Now you're only down to 2. You kind of need another. It wasn't that long ago that Bell was one of the best playmakers in the league when he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers from 2013 through 2017. He was the 3-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro, first team selection during that span, and was largely considered the gold standard of versatile running backs because he's very good out of the backfield with catching as well, receiving. He ran for more than 1,200 yards in 2014, 2016, and 2017. While tallying more than 600 receiving yards in each of those seasons as well. The Michigan State product surely would have put up similar numbers in 2015 as well, but injuries limited him to just 6 games. However, things changed in 2018 when he sat out the season because of a contract dispute and never took the field again for the Steelers. He joined the New York Jets for the 2019 campaign and posted a career worst 3.2 yards per carry, and he wasn't much better in the early going in 2020. New York released him in October, and the Kansas City Chiefs signed him later that month. I don't really think it was that later. I think they released him, and then 2 days later, the Chiefs, or it might have been on the same day as well. I don't know. I know it. I don't think they made it seem like he signed later that month. They think the Jets released him, and then they signed him a couple days later. I think it wasn't that much of a gap. Bell wasn't much of a factor in the loaded Chiefs offense and finished with 254 rushing yards, 99 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns in 9 regular season games. Carries were limited in the backfield that also featured Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams, and the aerial attack almost always took precedence with Patrick Mahomes throwing to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. That didn't leave much room for Bell, even if he did make his first career Super Bowl with the team. Baltimore surely hopes he rediscovers some of the old form he demonstrated as a member of the Steelers, especially if he has a bigger role than he did with Kansas City. That role may eventually be there without Dobbins and Hill, although the presence of Gus Edwards meant Baltimore wasn't desperate for another starter in the immediate aftermath. Look for Bell to be more of a change of pace back, with Edwards and quarterback Lamar Jackson remaining as the top options, but he could feature heavily in the offense without Dobbins. I will always say this with Bell. A lot of people say, is the fact that he's just old now. I will always say this about Bell, and I think Le'Veon Bell would tell you this. And he didn't, I don't know Bell personally, but he didn't tell me this, but I can guarantee you, and I've always said this, and maybe I'm wrong, and even if he says, he'll still say, I got stuff in me. But he's not going to say that he's not going to come out publicly and say, I'm done. Some team sign me, please. No, he's always going to say he's got stuff in him to go play. But I've always said this about Bell, because everyone says, he's old now, he stinks. I mean, he's only 29 years old. And I understand for a running back that's maybe older than people expect. Maybe 29 for the running back might be the equivalent to maybe 33, 34 for a regular player. Just because of running back and the toll it takes on your body, especially how much he got used in Pittsburgh. But that's because he was so good. And you're not going to, we got to play the long game and not use him as much. He was the best running back in the league. So I will always say this. I think what really messed up Bell was the fact that he held out in Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh had arguably the best offensive line in the league. Now they don't, because most of those guys are retired now. So they had a very good offensive line. He fit the scheme great. The fan base was around him. The franchise was around him. He was the talk of the league. And then to just not play one season, and then to just sign a massive deal with the Jets, and then he hasn't been the same. I will always say this, and maybe he says, it's not that, it's just he's old now, but I think that move to sit out that season stinks. Because if he plays that season, you can't tell me he's bad. He would have been good. He would have been great. He would have been exactly the running back he was with Steelers. And he should have just stayed there. But contracts get in the way, and he obviously wasn't happy. He decided to sit out. And I'm sure he does regret that decision, because he's not been the same since. And maybe he does show flashes with Baltimore, but he probably won't be, or at least be in the same role he was. I don't even know if he will get another opportunity to really start and get the opportunity like he did in Pittsburgh. That's personally just me. But it's a depth addition, and the Ravens get a veteran and experienced running back on the roster. But I will always say this. I think I will always say this with Le'Veon Bell. I think that decision in Pittsburgh messed him up. Now, you could always say, no, it's just the fact that he's old now. You could say that, but, I mean, he's 29, and I get that's old for a running back, but it's not like he's 35, and he's still trying to play. It just lines up, right? He was so good in the last season in Pittsburgh, he had a great year. Then he took a year off, then he comes back, and he hasn't been the same. It's like the puzzle's pretty much all put together. You just may be missing a couple pieces, because maybe age is a factor, but he was so good in Pittsburgh, then to just take a year off and not be the same. It's like, well, I think we kind of know why. But either way, Ravens add to a kind of depleted running back room now. We go into the season, it was very strong, and now it's kind of depleted with the injuries to Dobbins and Hill. Now you got Gus Edwards. Le'Veon Bell will get his opportunity when he's ready, and we'll see how it all plays out, because that is a very run-heavy team in Baltimore. Alrighty, so that's what I got for the Ravens and their signing of Le'Veon Bell. Coming up next here, as I've talked about this all off season long with the New York Jets, and now that we are only a couple days away from the Jets versus Panthers opening game week 1, we're 1 day away from the NFL starting, and Sunday will be the first full Sunday of the season. I've talked about this all off season long. Cornerback has been a question mark. And now that we were still only a couple days away, it is still a question mark of who's going to be the New York Jets' number 2 cornerback. Cornerback number 1 solved. The nickel cornerback is solved. Now the question is, who will be that number 2 cornerback? We'll get to that and much more surrounding the New York Jets defense and their cornerback room coming up next. Alright, so as we get closer and closer to the NFL season, we're now only one day away. Bucks, Cowboys probably are in the category of they've probably already released their full depth chart. Nothing's really confirmed technically until the teams take the field and the first play happens of the regular season for both offensively and defensively, because you could say, oh, this guy might start or this guy might play, but you might never play and you might just fool the media. So there's always questions going into the, especially week 1. Once week 1's over with and as the season plays out, you get to see, who's starting, who's not, maybe who starts this game, all that stuff, injuries, all that stuff then goes out. But one of the things that always happens before the season is your unofficial depth chart that gets released. So, all the other teams release their depth chart, and some people pay too much attention to it. I always look at it. I mean, as a fan, I'm not just going to sit here and just, I'm not just going to sit here and, not look at it. I mean, I'm going to always look at it. But, you don't want to pay too much attention to it. Some people, I think, overreact a little bit. But there are some things that you should that you should look at and maybe start to question things and what, who's going to start, who's not. Like, for example, San Francisco 49ers, on their unofficial depth chart, it's unofficial because nothing's been confirmed yet and there's still some decisions to be made. On their unofficial depth chart, Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback. So that's actually big because, so does that mean he's going to start, or is that kind of just how things are going to play out? Or that, so there's still some question marks, but like that's something that you should pay attention to. Like, that should be an eye opener. Well, Jimmy G starting. Well, it looks like Trey Lance probably won't start. So I've talked about the Jets a lot off season, and I'm a Jet fan, so I'm going to talk about the Jets. So I've talked about the Jets a lot this offseason, and I've talked about their offense, their defense. I guess I've talked about their special teams. Talked about the team as a whole. And I've talked about them this offseason. And I like I said, I'm optimistic. I've said this many times. I'm optimistic. I don't think people, it really annoys me that people don't realize what a new coach, new culture can do to a team. People have no clue. But that's besides the point. And I've talked about it. I'm optimistic about the Jets this season. Do I think they're going to go out and win 12 games and win a division? No. I've said this. Anywhere from, I think, 6 to 8 wins, I think, is completely realistic for the New York Jets. And I think you got to be optimistic. New coach, all that stuff. And I've been optimistic about the defense. I've been very optimistic about the offense because I don't think there's been this much positivity surrounding an offense for the New York Jets in a long time. Because the past couple seasons, the offense has been awful. And we haven't had a good receiving core. The offense line's been brutal. And now we finally actually have a solid offense line. We've put together a nice receiving core. And it looks like we have a really good quarterback in Zach Wilson. It looks like we have our guy. And we'll see how everything else plays out. We've actually surrounded him with pieces. He's walking into a much better situation than a lot of other quarterbacks have. But the one thing that I've talked about this offseason with the Jets, in particular, in terms of maybe some, in terms of just a question at a position, right? The edge, I guess, is kind of a question because, I guess the edge is kind of a question because Carl Lawson's gone, but then we go out and sign Shaq Lawson, and, he probably won't even start. It's probably going to be JFM, Quinnen Williams, Florenzo Fatukasi, and Bryce Huff, and then Shaq Lawson will probably be behind, I would only assume, JFM, but that could very well change, and we'll see how it all plays out. So I guess edge is kind of a question mark, I guess you could say. Linebackers really aren't. I know Jared Davis went down, but I think the linebackers are kind of obvious. It's going to be Mosley, Hamza Najruddin, and Jamian Sherwood, and you got the veteran and you got 2 rookies, so that's not bad. Your safeties are obviously pretty in check. Marcus May, LaMarcus Joyner, there's no surprise there. The one position I've talked about this entire season, I said, is not only going to be a question going into the year, but it's going to be a work in progress all season long, is the cornerback position for the New York Jets. Because we all know that the New York Jets, they have not, the past couple seasons in general, the Jets' cornerback situation has been relatively weak. We've not really had a true number one cornerback that we can completely rely on. I would say personally, our secondary in general has been kind of weak. When Adams was here, obviously great safety, and Marcus May had a very good year last season, but completely told our secondary has always been a little bit of an issue. Our run defense has always been good. Our sacks have been good. Linebackers have been good. It's always been our cornerbacks and our secondary that's always been the one part of the defense that you always go into a game that you're always a little concerned about. And I talked about it this offseason. And here we are sitting a couple days before week 1 and a couple days before we fly out to Carolina and go play the Carolina Panthers. I said that it was going to be a work in progress. And we are still undecided on who's going to be the number 2 cornerback for the New York Jets. So they released their unofficial depth chart yesterday. And this was the defense. I'll read you the defense. JFM, Quinnen Williams, Alonso Fatukasi, Bryce Huff. Your 3 linebackers are CJ Mosley, Hamza Najruddin, and Jamie and Sherwood. Your number 1 cornerback is going to be Bryce Hall. Crazy. He's actually the veteran pretty much of the group, and he's only in his second year. And that's why the releasing of Bless Austin was so shocking and so confusing. I don't think I talked about it because I think I ended up not doing a pod on that Thursday because I actually had to move the setups and stuff. And I remember, hearing that, and I was so surprised. Not that I was mad, I was just surprised that we released our most veteran guy, the guy who was probably going to be the number 1 cornerback on the roster. We released him, but it just goes to show you that the Jets are going all in on young guys. And then the nickel will be Javelin Guidry, which I don't know. I mean, he's fast, he's quick, he's very fast. I think he's one of the faster players in the league. He's very fast, but it's just a matter of his coverage and stuff like that. But the big question is the number 2 cornerback, right? I said, I said this, right? Marcus May, LaMarcus Joyner, they're going to start at safety. But this is the question. Who's going to be the number 2 cornerback lining up week 1? Is it going to be, right now, the starting cornerback is as listed. It's Isaiah Dunn, Brandon Echols, and Jason Pedock. No particular order. That's how they listed it. Just because Dunn's first, I don't think that means that Dunn's not. I don't know if that. I don't think that means anything that he's going to start. Maybe he will, but I don't think that means anything. If Peanock's last, I don't think that means he's not going to start, or he's going to be the 3rd string. Now, personally, I don't think Peanock will probably start. It's probably going to be between Brandon Echols and Isaiah Dunn. Will probably be the 2 that will probably come down to the wire starting. Not that I would be mad if Peanock started, or whatever. Not that I would be mad, I would just be surprised because I think he's probably going to be more so the backup, and it's either going to be Brandon Echols or Isaiah Dunn that's going to start. And I said this entire offseason. It's going to be a work in progress. Jets opted to not go out and sign a veteran cornerback like a Steven Nelson or Richard Sherman, although he had some off-the-field issues. But before he had his off-the-field issues, he was a good name. The Jets decided not to do that. They decided to say, hey, we're going to rely on the young guys. At the time, it was Bless Austin, Bryce Hall, Brandon Echols, all those guys. We're going to rely on the 3 guys that we drafted. That's Isaiah Dunn, Echols, and Peanock, and then Hall we drafted last season. We're going to rely on them. They opted to do that, and we're sitting here a couple days before week 1, and it's still a question mark. And I have a feeling that it's going to be this way this entire season. It's going to be a work in progress. That's what happens. And like I said, I'm not mad, but that's what happens when you have a young group of players, especially at a position in cornerback where it's so boom or bust. Cornerback is one of the hardest positions on the football field. It's almost like hitting in baseball. It's so difficult. You could have one game where you go off for 5 pass defended, you lock down a really good receiver, and then you have another game where you get toasted for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's how cornerback is. It's all about trying to build consistency, and it's all about trying to find consistency. So I'll tell you this. Whoever lines up week 1 as the starting, as the 3 cornerbacks, with the Bryce Hall, whoever's going to be number 2 and in the nickel, and that's Javelin Guidry, I would not be surprised if that very well could change throughout the season. Because let's say 2 weeks into the year, player A is not doing so well, you might say, hey, player B gets his opportunity. That's how it's going to be. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be mixing and mashing, trying to put this guy with this guy. Let's see what this guy can do. Maybe this coverage. Maybe this, point in the game we should put him in. This receiver or this guy, right? That's what it's going to be. But that's how Robert Saleh runs his defense. He relies heavily on his defensive line to get pressure, his linebackers and defensive line to get pressure, which results on the quarterbacks not having to hold on too long. That's the whole plan of the defense. Is it going to work flawlessly every time? No. But all we're asking out of the cornerbacks is if they can just hold down for a little bit, get that defense line to get that pressure, and force the quarterback into bad throws. So, yes, the cornerback's weak. But if the defense goes as planned, you just got to hope it works out the way where the cornerbacks don't have to hold coverage for too long. You can get to the quarterback and force him into bad throws and make the cornerbacks not have to be in coverage for a long time. But it's going to be a work in progress. And as I mentioned, I think there's going to be 1 week, it might be a Brandon Echols starting. And if he struggles, then it might be done. And if he struggles, maybe they give Pinnock a chance. Or maybe they switch Hall around. Or maybe they move this guy or that. But I'll tell you what, it's going to be a work in progress when your second-year cornerback, Bryce Hall, who didn't play much last season because he was coming off a bad ankle injury in college, is your veteran cornerback in that locker room. Second-year player, and he's the most experienced. Pretty crazy. But that's how the Jets are going to run this. It's going to be young. It's going to be develop the youth. And, it's probably going to be worse before it gets better, but it's just a matter of getting them experience. And the Jets kind of opted to have this cornerback room a work in progress when they did not go out and sign a veteran cornerback like a Sherman or a Nelson. Like I said, this was before all of Richard Sherman's off-the-field stuff. Once his off-the-field stuff hit, we knew he was not going to get signed by the Jets or any team. So, it's just going to be a work in progress. Now, who's going to start week 1? That's the question. Personally, I'm going to tell you who I think should start. This is who I think. Personally, just out of the blue, I think Brandon Echols should start. I think he's been the best out of the 3 in training camp. I've seen some clips of him. He looked good in some plays. He looked good in the preseason. I have a little bit of, it's not that I'm iffy on Isaiah Dunn, because the guy's still young, he's still learning, and all these guys are going to have moments. And that's what's going to happen with the young. There's going to be moments where they maybe look really good, and there's going to be moments where they might look lost, and they might get burned. But that's just all about the learning process, and now it's all growing, and that's just the nature of the game where, that's just the nature of the game where you're going to have moments where you look really good and you look like the future, and you're also going to have moments where where you don't look good and it's not going good for you. But personally, I think Brandon Echols is probably the safest choice. If you're just going off of trustworthiness and going off of what you saw in training camp, I think Brandon Echols is the safest choice. Because what I saw from him in preseason training camp and what I heard, he looked really good and he was developing too. He got better throughout training camp, which meant he was learning and he was growing. And sure, he still hasn't been in a real NFL game action, a game that actually counts. But from what I've heard and from what I've saw, he was one of those guys that really just, he got better throughout training camp. And I'm a little iffy with Isaiah Dunn, and I'll tell you why. Now, if we decide to start Isaiah Dunn, he's a rookie, so I'm not going to judge everything off of him going up against the Packers. But he had a rough game against the Packers. I think he had a pass interference. He allowed a touchdown. He had a little bit of a rough game against the Packers. That preseason Week 2 game. Now, you can't judge everything off the preseason, as I always said. Even if it's good or bad things, you can't judge it all. Because it's completely different when you get out there and you really get into a game. So, like I said, I don't really know completely, Zay Dunn might turn out to be this great player, but I think the safest option is probably Echols. And Jason Pinnock, he's kind of been one of those guys too that it's like he's there, but I think he's more on the outside looking in, personally. Right now, I think it's Brandon Echols' job to lose at number 2 cornerback. Very well, though, there's a very good chance maybe Robert Saleh and his staff decide to say, hey, we want to see what these young guys can do, we're going to put them out there. Personally, what I would want, though, I personally want Eccles out there. I just think he's looked the best in training camp. I think seems like he's the most ready. And Isaiah Dunn, I think Pinnock might need a little bit more time. Not that they're doing bad, but it's just like, it's way more risky, I think, to put I think it would be the riskiest to put Isaiah Dunn out there. I'll leave it at that. Because I don't think Pinnock's that bad. And I think Pinnock's kind of been in a situation where I kind of think coming in, he wasn't, I don't know if he was expected to get much playing time anyway, being one of those late round picks. I think Eccles also showed a lot of promise at Kentucky. He went up against some solid receivers over there, being in the SEC. He definitely showed some promise over there. And he's shown, like I said, if you're in terms of growing, in terms of developing, I think Eccles has done the best so far in terms of first day of training camp to all the way now. He's made big strides, and I think he's probably the most ready. But we'll see. So personally, I'd probably rank it Brandon Eccles, Pinnock, and then Dunn. I'm not against Isaiah Dunn. I'm just saying that I think it might be a little more risky because I think he might need a little bit more time, a little more practice, a little more film in order for him to really get out there. Because he struggled in a couple of the preseason games. He's had moments in training camp, but it's not really been what Eccles or some of them did, if you follow what I'm saying. So that's kind of how I see it. But it's still a work in progress. And if player A has a really bad game, you might put player B back out there. And maybe player C gets an opportunity. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to say it, but hey, right? This is what the Jets signed up for. And Saleh, being a defensive-minded head coach, clearly made the decision to say, hey, we believe in our young guys, and that's how it is. And this could go one of two ways. It's simple as this. When you buy in and when you go all in on playing young players, it could go either way. It could go either A, it could go really smoothly and they look good and they're progressing, or it could go B, they look terrible and they don't know what they're doing. But that's all a part of the learning process. So, as Jet fans, we got to hope that they get better. And that's the big thing. Jet fans got to be patient with the cornerbacks. We're going to have to be patient. I know it's been a long time with the Jets just getting things wrong, but we're going to have to be patient because they're young. They might have a really bad couple games, but towards the end of the year, they might play much better. It's just how it is. We're in a rebuild. We're resetting. We have young guys. We're developing them. That's just the nature of how it is. So, we'll see how everything plays out with the Jets. And, as I've kind of alluded to earlier, it's a work in progress. And the Jets decided to do this. So, cornerback still a question mark, but we'll see how it all plays out. And just because one guy's starting week 1, that does not mean he's going to be the starter for all 17 games, because there's a very good chance that they mix and mash and change and all that stuff depending on how they play, depending on their opponent, and ultimately I think also depending on their record. Because I think let's say the Jets are winning and they're doing actually pretty and they're surprising people, you might put whoever's best out there. But if it's kind of just, kind of still a rebuild, if the Jets are winning, they'll probably put the guy that's working best out there. But there still could be changes, and that's really how it is. But yeah, so cornerback still a question mark. Other than that, though, right tackle still a question mark. But the thing with right tackles that's different than quarterback, you got two guys that have been in the league. George Font's been in the league for a little bit now, and Morgan Moses and Jordan Font have been in the league for a while now. So they're two veterans. So whoever's in there, they've already had experience. They're veterans. They know what they're doing. It's a little different with the cornerback because no matter what, no matter if you put in Eccles, Dunn, or Pinnock, it's going to be their first NFL game they're playing in. So it's different from being in the right tackle situation. You got two veterans battling it. That's different. But you go to the cornerback, you got guys that are going to be playing in their first NFL game. So we'll see how it all plays out. But it's going to be a lot of mixing and mashing this season. And hey, we'll see how it all plays out. But you just got to hope that it's successful. And you got to hope to see the development of all the young players. Alrighty. So, yeah. That's what I got for the cornerback situation with the Jets. The most ideal situation would to be these guys continue to grow. And these are the cornerbacks of the future. That would be the most ideal. But we'll see. Alrighty, so let's get to the New York sports update here and finish off the podcast here today. By the way, tomorrow I got my NFL power rankings. I will release those. I know I did not release my divisions. I just decided, there's all these other news to talk about. I figured I'll release my power rankings. That will give you a good idea of how I feel about teams. I'll release my top 10 power rankings tomorrow. Then we'll get to fantasy, and I'll reveal my first game pick of the 2021 season, which I have a good idea of who I'm going to pick. It's actually, I got to tell you this. It's actually a tough game to pick, Bucs or Cowboys. And maybe a lot of people think, Bucs are going to smoke them. I think the Bucs are going to have a little bit of a down here this year. That's just me. Everyone's like, they brung all these players back. Yeah, but all those players got a year older. And all those players, they got a lot of older players on that team. Not that it means everything, but, okay, you brung all these players back. And they're still, celebrating their chance. I could just see a very big hangover in the Bucs. So, the Bucs, I get that, their defense and all that, but the Cowboys with Dak and them all back, there's also that part. It's just, but then the Cowboys, the Cowboys, I would give the advantage to the Cowboys on offense. I would give the advantage to the Bucs on defense. So, you got to make a decision there. Is the Bucs offense better than the Cowboys defenses? Meaning, they're weak, that's just, I don't know. Because the Cowboys have a really good offense, but their defense is terrible. They do have some young guys, and I do believe Micah Parsons is going to be very good, but it's going to take time. He's not just going to explode. Maybe he will, but it's going to take time for Parsons to really become an elite linebacker, which I believe he will. Very good, very, very athletic coming out of Penn State. But do you go with the Cowboys and go with their offense, and it's going to be a shootout, or do you go with the Bucs and their offense being really solid, but their defense holding it down? So it's kind of one of those 50-50 games. I do have a good idea of who I'm going to pick. I'm not going to say who, but definitely going to be a good game. Bucs, Cowboys tomorrow. Alrighty, so let's get to the New York Sports Update here to finish out the podcast. Like I said, you want to start. I think last season I started 1-0 because I did my game picks last year as well, and I believe I started 1-0 because I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe last season it was the Chiefs Texans week 1. I predicted the Chiefs to win. They ended up winning. And I believe week 1, it just goes to show you kind of the nerd I am when it comes to sports. I think I went 10-6 on my game picks in week 1 of last season. I could probably go back and look at the older videos. I believe I went 10-6 on my game picks for week 1 last season. So, gotta hope for the same this season as well. Or hope for a good season. I remember last year, too, I predicted the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I think I had 99 wins. I think 99 right picks. I wanted to get to 100. I think I had 99, and then I got the Chiefs pick wrong, which was, I guess, not really ideal. But either way, let's get to the New York Sports Update anyway. Before I could blab on and on and on about this stuff. But anyway, so yesterday the Angels won, White Sox won, Rangers won. Giants won, Cheaters won, Dodgers won, Brewers won. We'll get to the Mets in a second. Braves won, Reds won, Rays won, Pirates won, Orioles won, and Twins won. Mets also won yesterday 9-4, so the Mets, they fall to 500. Now they're one game above 500, so they moved to 70 and 69 on the season. Yankees lost yesterday 5-1, so the Yankees moved to 78 and 60 on the season. And as I mentioned earlier, we had 8 hits yesterday. So I'm going to say this again because I can't stress this enough. Every Yankee fan saying, we stink, we can't do anything. But here's the thing. I agree, we're not playing well. But it's not really so much that we're just not hitting enough with runners in scoring position, yesterday we had more hits than the Blue Jays. And you can't deny that. Look at the stats. Yankees had 8 hits yesterday, Blue Jays had 7. I'm not trying to defend the Yankees. This is against them. Yankees had 8 hits yesterday. Blue Jays had 7. Who won? Blue Jays, 5-1. Why? Because they got the hits with runners in scoring position. Yankees would get a leadoff runner on, and they would do nothing with it. So that's the difference in a baseball game. Hitting with runners in scoring position, and just hitting and not scoring that runner. Simple as that. Alright, so as for today, we got the Cheaters and the Mariners. I'll give Cheaters the win. And I take that back, kind of I'll readjust my words here in a sec. Here. Because a couple seconds ago, like I just mentioned, when a player gets a hit, there's Yankee fans complaining, this guy hits, but he doesn't hit with runners scoring. Well, you got to get runners on in order to hit. This is where Yankee fans don't know what they're talking about. And I am a Yankee fan, and I've always said this. I think Yankees have one of the worst fan bases in terms of knowledge of the actual game. Like, not knowing what they're talking about. And I'm not saying I know everything what I'm talking about, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, if people are watching this, they probably disagree with me and say, oh, well, yeah, we're hitting, but, how can you say we're hitting? Well, we got 8 hits yesterday. We're just not doing with runners in scoring position. Situational hitting is going to win you and lose you baseball games. It's as simple as that. What the difference between winning and losing a baseball game is you're pitching and bullpen, but you're situational hitting. Because sure, you could put up 10 hits and score 2 runs. I mean, the Yankees had 8 hits yesterday and scored 1 run. Blue Jays had 7 and scored 5 runs. They almost scored more runs than they did hits. Just goes to show you. So everybody, all these Yankee fans are complaining, oh, they're hitting, but not with runners in scoring position. Well, hold on a second. You can't say that because people are like, oh, this guy's hitting, but not with runners on. Like, so you're going to complain that the guy's getting hits, but you got to get runners on base first, and then before you can even hit with runners in scoring position. Like, I don't know. People are just, I've always said, like, stats are great to a certain extent, but there's only so much that you can use the stats. And everyone's like, oh, well, use the, look at the stats and all that. And I get that. But, look at the stats and everyone's like, oh, well, you can't tell everything off stats. And I get that. You got to look at the eye test as well. Because on paper, if you remove the game, if you remove the score of that game yesterday, and you see the Yankees had 8 hits and the Blue Jays had 7, and you didn't watch the game, you don't know the score. You would and you're not a Yankee or a Blue Jay fan, you would probably assume that Yankees scored at least 3 runs, and the Blue Jays maybe scored 4. Instead, it was 5-1. So, that's just how it is. But, like, all these Yankee fans are like, oh, this guy's hitting. So, are we going to sit here and complain that Rizzo had 3 hits yesterday or whatever, but he wasn't hitting with runners on? Like, you got to come up with this perfect situation. Like, everyone always talks about 2 walk-offs. Walk-offs in baseball, I think, are very overrated. I'm not getting a walk-off, but, like, everyone's always like, oh, Judge doesn't get walk-offs. He's not clutch. You realize the perfect situation you have to be in order to get a walk-off? First of all, you have to get up with at least a runner on, And it's got to be at least either a 1-run game or a 2-run game. If there's bases loaded and you're down by 3, well, you got to hit a grand slam. That's a lot you're asking. But Judge gets big hits throughout games. Everyone's like, oh, he doesn't get walk-offs. Yeah, well, walk-offs are not that common. And even when they happen, everything has to line up perfectly. Judge has to be up, there has to be a runner on, and it has to be within reach. Like, if Judge gets up and they're down by 3 and there's a runner on second, even if Judge hits a home run, they're still down by 1. Like, everybody gets too caught up in that, too. As simple as this. Yankees hit with runners in scoring position, we win games. Leave it at that. And the big news, too, is Cole. I mean, he got injured, and that stinks because he wasn't pitching that bad. He really wasn't. I mean, he didn't have his best stuff, but he was grinding through the game. It wasn't like he allowed 7 runs in 3 innings. He pitched 3 2/3 innings. I think allowed 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned, or 3 runs, 2 earned. And his ERA going into the game was 2.73. His ERA now is like 2.78 or 2.79. So it only raised about 0.5. So he didn't get rocked. He had a hamstring injury, and you got to hope that he's ready for his next start. We'll see. All right, so as for the rest of the games, we got Giants, Rockies. I'll give Giants to win. Diamondbacks, Rangers. I'll give Diamondbacks to win. Indians, Twins. I'll give Indians to win. Pirates, Tigers. I will give. We'll give Pirates to win. Why not? We'll get to the Mets in a second. Royals, Orioles. I'll give Royals to win. Rays, Red Sox. I will give Rays to win. Braves, Nationals. Give Braves to win. Brewers, Phillies. Give Brewers to win. Let's see here. Reds, Cubs, give Reds to win. Dodgers, Cardinals, give Dodgers to win. Padres, Angels, give Padres to win. And A's, White Sox, I will give A's to win. Mets, Marlins also play today. Mets come in this game 70-69. Marlins come in this game 57-81. This game goes on today, 6:40 p.m. East Standard Time on Bally Sports Florida. You can also find us on SNY. Mets got Rich Hill on the mound. He's 6-6 with a 3.93 ERA. And the Marlins got Sandy Alcantara on the mound. He's 8-13 with a 3.36 ERA. The over-under for this game is set at 7. And 52% of people think the Mets will win. I actually think the Marlins win. They got Sandy Alcantara on the mound. He's their best pitcher. Give me the Marlins. I actually think they might squeak away with a win. As for today as well, we got the Yankees, Blue Jays. Yankees coming into the game 78-60. Blue Jays coming into this game 75-62. This game comes on today, 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time on LB Network. You can also find it on Yes Network. The Blue Jays got Alek Manoah on the mound. He's 5-2 with a 3.63 ERA. And the Yankees got Luis Gil on the mound. He's 1-0 with a no ERA. And the over-under for this game is set at 10. And 56% of people think the Blue Jays win. I do think the Blue Jays win, but Gil's on the mound, so he's been great since he's come up. Three appearances, hasn't allowed a run yet. Been great to see. So I get to fantasy here as well. I probably will just give the Mets the win. I don't even know, because Sandy Alcantara's actually had a pretty good season, but the Marlins just can't seem to really hit much. So you log on to fantasy, and the first thing that comes up is your fantasy home, and it's fantasy football. And it's crazy that tomorrow we'll be talking about fantasy football. Right now, tomorrow in each league, I have Amari Cooper in both leagues. So tomorrow we'll have Amari Cooper in one league, and I'll have Amari Cooper in my other league. Now, the only issue with having the Cowboys and stuff like playing tomorrow, I go up against Dak in my other league. So it's like, if Dak throws a touchdown and Amari Cooper catches it, it's good, but it's like, that's also a ton of points for my opponent. So it's one of those, that's just how it is. It's just how it is in fantasy. Like, if Dak Prescott throws a touchdown, Amari Cooper, like, if Dak throws 3 touchdowns, Amari Cooper catches 2 of them. Well, that's a big day for Dak, but also a big day for Amari Cooper, but it's like, oh gosh. Like, he gets a ton of points, but so do I. So, I'm just hoping that Amari Cooper has a big day. Dak, I like Dak a lot, but I hope if Dak's going to throw touchdowns, let it be to Amari Cooper. But anyway, let's get to fantasy baseball. I'm currently winning 106-38. So going pretty good there. Today I've got going Will Smith, Matt Olson, Jake Cronenworth, Gene Segura, Marcus Semien, Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Christian Yelich, Whit Merrifield, Dylan Carlson, Avisail Garcia, Josh Harrison, and Austin Riley. Pretty much the same lineup as yesterday, although I might make a change here because Josh Harrison's now day-to-day. We will get to that in a second here. But I got Alek Manoah on the mound today. He's starting. I'm still debating on whether or not I want to do another pitcher. I mean, a pitching move. Tyler Rogers did not pitch yesterday, so he hasn't pitched since the 5th. Today's the 8th. So I'm hoping he gets in today, and if he does, give me just a couple points. That's all I'm really asking for. It's against the Rockies. They're not a very good team. It's kind of like it's against Rockies. It's kind of want him to get out there and go, but we'll see if they decide to play him. But we got some injury updates, and not very good injury updates to do here. So we'll get to Garrett Cole first here. So manager Aaron Boone said Cole hamstring isn't scheduled to undergo an MRI and is optimistic the injury was caught early enough to avoid any real problems after leaving Tuesday's loss to the Blue Jays. Lindsey Adler of The Athletic reports Cole 14-7 on the season was charged with a loss after giving up 3 runs, 2 earned, and 5 hits with 2 strikeouts and 2 walks over 3 2/3 innings. So that's that. So the reason I say it's not good news because he got injured. That's never good. But I guess the good news is it doesn't seem to be anything major. You just got to hope that it isn't, and he's back out there. I don't think any Yankee fan today wants to hear any of that. Just not good. But you got to hope that he's ready for his next start. And as for Josh Harrison was removed from Tuesday's loss to the White Sox due to left lower back tightness, Matt Kawara of the San Francisco Chronicle reports. So we'll see what's the updates on him. That's how it is. I mean, injuries happen. I've always said that about fantasy. I love fantasy. It's great. But the injury part just really, it's just like, it's the worst part. And you can say that about anything. I mean, even sports, just watching sports in general, the injuries stink. But, I guess that's just how it is. So, that'll do it for the podcast. Tomorrow, big day, start of the NFL season. Bucks, Cowboys tomorrow. So tomorrow we're 1 day away from that. And then Friday, that's 2, Saturday. We're like 4 days away from the NFL season. From the Sunday games. So, Tomorrow's it. Thursday Night Football tomorrow. And everybody always asks, like, even though it's not my favorite or your favorite team, like, just the excitement around having football back is there. Like, sure, I'm going to get really excited for the Jets-Panthers game, but just the excitement and the fact that there's going to be live football on tomorrow and it's going to count and it's a great matchup. Even if both teams are, in interesting situations, Bucks coming off a champion, how will they respond this season? Cowboys, with all the questions there. They're going to be missing Zach Martin. And all of that stuff. America's team, it's Bucks and Brady. It's all that. Defending Super Bowl champions. And then you got, Cowboys and America's team. Dak's back. All those things. So we'll see how it all goes. But that's tomorrow. And tomorrow I will reveal my NFL power rankings. I'll give you my first round of fantasy advice for the NFL. And then Friday's the big day, because Friday we'll do my tomorrow will be game pick. But then Friday we got all the game picks, and we got fantasy, and we got all that. So that's great. We'll get to all that. Should be fun. That will do it for today's podcast, though. Another good podcast in the books. Tons and tons and tons of sports. Yankees and Mets on today. Tomorrow's there's football. It's overwhelming, but it's great to have all these sports on. And that'll do it. With all that being said, that'll do it for the podcast here today. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.